Your parents worked 40 years to build wealth, all in equity in their house, and the system extracts that in 36 months. So let's say the quiet part out loud. You were never inheriting that house. $500 billion a year is drained from family estates through senior care, not by accident, but by design.
This is scary. This is kind of like, reading this honestly makes me a little bit, it's funny because I read a lot about like, how much do you need in retire? Or you'll see these articles. How much do you need in retirement? Can you retire of 1 million? Can you retire of whatever? I think that yes, if everything goes right, folks can go retire off a million or a couple $1,000,000. But let's be honest, like things don't always go right. And senior care is a big deal. I watched my grandma go through senior care. So did my grandpa. Now, luckily they had some kind of insurance. I don't know what you call the insurance, but it was some kind of long-term care insurance. And that actually kicked in. It was a good deal and it covered them. So they did not have to, basically liquidate all the assets. But like, I think when you look at this across the US, folks are literally selling their homes, liquidating 401ks, whatever that is, and it's going into senior care. It's a big deal because inheritances, family sort of like, net worth is disappearing. Now I think there's the argument, well, yeah, go buy senior care and get on the other side of this. But there's also just like, hey, we really need to pay attention. Like, how much are we going into this, retirement with? And what does this look like? Because 8, 10, 15K a month, that's a big deal.
Well, first of all, fuck retirement. Like working until you're too old to enjoy life. Like that's a broken old model anyway. Like I say, screw that model. I hate the idea of working forever just to have, just to retire someday when you're too old. But when you look at like those that own assets and you just do the math, okay? So 500 billion a year gets extracted from family estates. 500 billion. So the average person is in senior care for 2 to 3 years. And the average home equity is about 250K. So someone works their whole life. Like when we're talking about inheritance, we're not talking about the ultra wealthy. We're talking about the individual, the mom and pop that bought one single family home and all their equities tied up in that home. And that average home equity is 250K. That's almost nothing. And then they get old, they retire. And going back to that scenario in the beginning, they fall, they break their hip, $8,000 a month in care. Now they need a facility that's costing an average of $6,000 a month. That equity's gone. That's gone in 2 to 3 years. So it's like, it's not only about not passing down the wealth. I think it's this phantom equity that's tied up in one home, and one medical emergency, one thing happens and all that equity is wiped out. And not only is that person left with nothing, but their children are left with nothing as well. You can't rely on this equity in one home. You have to own like actual assets, like cash producing assets. And owning care facilities, private equity bought up 30% of the facilities in the last 10 years. 30% of senior living facilities were bought up by private equity in the last 10 years.
So, I get it. You started the conversation with like talking about, retirement, like fuck that. You don't want to work forever or work till you're 60 or whatever and then retire. The way I think about it, I'll probably still be doing real estate deals in my 80s because I don't really consider it that hard of work and I kind of
That's
enjoy it.
that's not the same as working though. I'm talking like the guy or gal that's like working for somebody else. They're too old and hope they have enough money to retire.
This is the other thing too, is like, here's what's sad. And I was listening to this guy talk about money and time and the connection between the two. When your time is for sale and you sell your time for money, then somebody else takes advantage of you or services you, say in a care facility. They're not attached to time anymore. In other words, you think about these older folks, they spent all their life selling their time for money to build equity in their home, and it's all gone in 3 years. 30 years of effort. So this is for me, it's another argument. Like, guys, you got to find some way to disconnect your time from money. Stop selling it because someone will take it or it will go away in some circumstance someday very quickly. And you don't want to see that. Like, that's the biggest loss to me. Because when someone spends $500,000 on care or whatever, it's a different loss for different folks. If somebody spent their whole life for that $500,000, it's a huge loss. But for somebody like us who makes that in one deal, it's not a huge loss. You see what I'm saying? Like that to me is the sad part. Is people are literally giving away their lives for this.
I mean, Mitch talks about that all the time, disconnecting hours from dollars. And you've got to, I mean, that's the great thing about this country. We have the ability to put systems in place, leverage other people's capital, leverage other people's time to build actual systems that you manage that allows you to scale. I mean, especially with inflation, you can only trade so many hours for so many dollars, and it's very finite, and you're only going to get so far. And it's not a really fun process getting there anyway. So, I mean, unless the people own the care facilities, now they're leveraging systems, they're
Well,
leveraging other people's time.
that's the exact point. So instead of being a victim of the system, own the system. I don't think any of us own senior living facilities, but I do think it's a huge opportunity. And this isn't about
Well, Mitch would argue that I own my own house, apparently, and I'm old. So maybe I do. I don't know. I just wanted to beat Mitch to it.
I love that little wheel.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a hard time with senior care facilities a little bit. Maybe it's a bit of a tangent. I mean, these places are unbelievably expensive, and with a profit motive, they're sort of I don't know what the solution is, but they're incentivized to like cut corners everywhere you can. And if you don't watch these facilities like a hawk, man, next thing you know, they're feeding your loved ones Cheerios and Jello, and treating them like shit and paying like minimum wage to people. So
But wouldn't it should be to own the system, own the properties, buy the senior living facility?
yeah, but then it's like, but then that senior living facility or that business is valued based on profitability. So they're incentivized to maximize revenue at but I guess you could approach it like you do like an apartment community or mobile home park community, like add a lot of value. I mean, the ones that my in-laws were in, I think it was like 10 grand a month or something like that. And they were wealthy. They made good investments in paper assets, not real estate, but they could afford it. But yeah, you're right. And he did. He worked his whole life and he did really well, and he did really well in the stock market. So he could then have a nice living in a senior care facility and then die, and then it was all gone, And so, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, because like state run senior care facilities are like the worst. Anything run by the government is a complete shit show.
If you like what you're hearing so far and you are not making at least $120,000 a year with cash flow real estate or have millions of dollars in equity, come check out our 0 to 100 elite community. The link is below. Check it out.
If you go back to like, what do you do about this? I don't know, yeah, we could debate like whether we buy, someone buys a facility or not. But I think that this goes back and it really supports cash flow real estate, because when you have cash flow from real estate, you don't have to spend the equity. Right. When you go into a care facility and the only asset you have is, say, your 401k, some cash in the bank and your home equity, then you're going to burn through that, because that's not cash producing. Those are not cash producing assets. And you're going to be forced to burn through those. Cash flow, you're 65, you're 70, you're 80, or whenever you go into these facilities and you have 10K and cash flow, then that's not a problem, because that cash flow is going to go into the care facility. The assets still exist. They still continue to appreciate, and the inheritance is still intact for your kiddos if that's your goal. So I think that there's a difference between burning through equity and then or using cash flow, just like in your normal life, to support your whatever life throws at you.
That's another good side tangent. I mean, people argue then paper assets, because we had debates around stock versus real estate, stock bonds, paper assets. And they say, well, if I build up a massive portfolio, I can basically spend that in retirement. And a lot of times people say, oh, I just spend the gains. Like if it goes up, I just spend the gains. I don't touch the principal, or I just spend the dividends. I don't know how that game's played really, but it seems like it would be fairly tough unless you had a sizable paper asset portfolio to not touch the principal. I think real estate makes more sense.
But that's
to me.
not the average person. The average person has equity tied up in maybe one house. So like, I don't know what percentage of Americans still own their home, right? I think it's going down, right? But we can look that up later. But it's not everybody, first of all, owns their home. And those that own their home, the average American owns one home. So all that equity is tied up in one home. It's the home they live in. There is no cash flow. We're not talking about prudent investors. We're not talking about those that have done well in the stock market. Those were, those that put money away for retirement, or those that invest in real estate. We're talking the average American that owns their home, who has equity tied up in that home. And one bad thing happens. Mom and dad, they fall, they break a hip, they break a leg, something, and all that equity is gone on average in 2 to 3 years. Medical bills, care facility, rehab, gone. And so I think the art,
It's huge business. Memory care.
oh,
So, yeah.
and I think the conversation is more around like why you need to own assets, whether it's a care facility or other real estate. It's assets that put money in your pocket. That's the cash flow we talk about, that, but also builds wealth over time because these oh shit, we talk about the oh shit moments that happen in real estate. Well, oh shit moments happen in life too. And if you don't have money to pay for those, like you're fucked. I mean, if your only equity, your only access to wealth is to either borrow it or to pull it from your personal property, you're done for.
Well, my mom is a good example. She was a PE teacher and worked her ass off her whole life. I mean, they middle school PE, like fucking shoot me, like, and they invested in their PERS here in Oregon. It's the retirement fund, and then they kept moving the goalposts, kept changing it. They had to wait another 5 years to retire. Like these people are working to in their 70s before they retire, and I think my mom got out in their 60s, but like. And her number one asset that at least her number one wealth holder is her home. It's not the PERS, it's not the retirement fund, et cetera. It's her house. And you're right to your point, Gabe, one thing can take you out. And with cash flow, without cash flow and the cost of living going up, I mean, like, I think we're going to have to have more social programs because there's so many people that just can't keep up with the cost of living by doing the traditional thing, going to college, getting a job, giving their money to the money managers in Wall Street. I don't think there's enough with the cost of living going up. I think, people talk about AI taking out jobs and universal basic income. I think just the fact that you can't invest your way in the stock market fast enough with a typical W-2 job to live late into retirement with a cost of living. I mean, think about how expensive shit's going to be when we're old.
The popularized sort of like method and the I don't know if you guys ever paid attention to the FIRE movement, FIRE. It was something retire young, retire rich, whatever that was.
I was doing that shit before it was a FIRE movement. From the book, you just said retire young, retire rich. That book changed my life. That's on the Rich Dad series, retire young, retire.
That is a good book. So, but FIRE was like the thing that I think where I think FIRE is flawed is they talk about just basically getting a big lump sum of money and then you're living off of, that lump sum over a certain amount of years. It's not necessarily cash flow from what I could tell. And I think that this is a popularized method is that in our lives, we work really hard, we get this huge lump sum, and then we divide into that lump sum what we need. Nest egg, there you go, that concept. We divide into what we need every year. Here's the problem though, is if you start working at 22, 23 years old, maybe your number is $100,000 or $150,000 that you're going to need. And you're kind of forecasting that, right? Oh, if I have this much money, I can stop and I can live for this long. Well, by the time you retire, by the way, it's going to be about $500,000 a year that you need because the value of the dollar has gone down that much. So the whole nest egg concept in an inflationary market is working against you versus if you're buying cash flow real estate or cash flow assets, businesses, whatever that is, it's working with you because the cash flow adjusts per inflation. Prices adjust per inflation. Rent goes up per inflation. So really, like when you look at the two, I think one is really flawed and it's really hard to live a good big life based on a nest egg.
Yeah, and I think something else that a topic I don't think maybe we don't talk about it enough on the show when you're comparing like the nest egg and the 401k or the Roth or the lump of the chunk of value you have sitting in the markets, right? And we all know shit hits a fan that gets cut by 33%. Oh shit, if I happen to be retiring at the time when the stock market's correcting or taking a hit like it did during COVID, like it did in 2001, then you're working another 10 years waiting for your nest egg to increase. The other thing we talk about too is that you can't, like, the wealthy use leverage. They use debt in a smart way. And everybody, like, the Dave Ramseys of the world have sort of villainized debt. But if you're talking about debt, like the wealthy that have massive, say, paper asset portfolios, they own a lot, they mean like Elon Musk, or they own a lot of shares in a publicly traded company. They take debt against those holdings. They just don't go start cashing it out and spending it. And the same thing, but the average Joe can't do that, right? The average Joe can't go maybe there's some vehicles out there that allow them to do, but real estate's like the number one way you can say, oh, I bought this. We have a property we bought for 1.1, put $300,000 in. Our basis is 1.4 to 1.5. It's worth $4.5 million. We can go refinance and pull out several $1 million return all the money back to our investors. We take a nice big payday. We still own the asset. It's still cash flowing. It's still appreciating in value. We're still paying down principal on the new debt. And debt's a tool you can use against real estate that I don't think is as readily available as useful against paper assets.
The key there is what you just said in the words, we still own the asset. Look, those, like, we could say it to the word blue in the face, like those who own assets, whether you like this system or not, like we're part of some sort of system, right? And in our country, it's kind of a combination of capitalism with some socialism kind of tied in. And no matter what direction politically, the United States is going, owning assets, again, we'll say it till we're blue in the face. Like, owning the assets will always put you in a better position than those that don't. And the middle class will get wiped out. There will be a bigger gap between the haves and the have-nots. And it's
which is terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. But you can complain about the system or you can play the game. Like, some might say it's rigged against you, but like, look, I play to win, and there is a way to win in this game. And to me, it's owning assets, it's owning cash producing assets, owning real estate that puts money in your pocket. It sets you up today, and it sets you up for the future as well.
Well, these rules that you play by, like, we don't write the rules, like Kiyosaki says. We just understand the rules, so we play the rules, right? These rules that we're talking about, like, are available to anybody. Like, this whole, like, oh, you've got to be like rubbing elbows with so-and-so on the golf course or in the country club, you got to be in the inner circles, is bullshit. Like, the tax code is available to everybody, right? Using depreciation, using 1031 exchanges, using cash out refinances to tap equity tax-free. Like, and the government knows that. They know that, and they want us to take advantage of those tax rules because they don't want to be owning housing, right? The ability to raise capital, the ability to find really good deals with inefficiencies to unlock lots of value in cash flow, that's available to everybody. So this whole, like, must be nice, Mitch, must be nice, Gabe, you guys are in the right rooms. Like, no one let us in the fucking room. You look at us. I mean, look at Mitch. Like, no one let us in the room. We had to get in the rooms and we had to learn the game and win.